Look at the messages we are force-fed about success. For the last 20 years, the productivity industry has worshipped at the altar of hustle culture. We have been brainwashed to believe that success requires absolute, agonizing suffering. We are told that if we want to be elite, if we want to build a massive YouTube channel, ace an MBA dissertation, or become a top-tier finance manager, we must sacrifice our sleep, our joy, and our mental health. We are taught the fundamental equation of modern work. Discipline plus suffering equals success. And once you are successful, then you will finally be happy. Dr. Ali Abdaal, a former Cambridge University medical doctor and the world's most followed productivity expert, reached the absolute pinnacle of this hustle culture. He was working 80-hour weeks in a hospital while building a multimillion-dollar business. And it broke him. He hit a wall of absolute, devastating burnout. He realized that the equation we have been taught is entirely backward. Welcome to the book vault. Feel-good productivity. Through years of researching psychology, neuroscience, and human performance, Ali Abdaal discovered a biological truth that changes everything. Success does not lead to feeling good. Feeling good leads to success. When you are stressed and relying entirely on sheer discipline, your brain biologically narrows. But when you experience positive emotions, joy, curiosity, connection, your brain releases endorphins and dopamine that literally expand your cognitive capacity, boost your creativity, and make hard work feel effortless. Over the next 3 sessions, we are going to completely dismantle your reliance on the grind. Chapter 1. The Magic of Play, Destroying the Seriousness Trap. If you want to generate limitless energy, you must fundamentally change how you view your daily tasks. As children, we had infinite energy. We could run around a playground for 10 hours straight without needing a coffee break or a motivational podcast. Why? Because we were playing. But as we become adults, we fall into the seriousness trap. We convince ourselves that because our work is important, it must also be miserable, stressful, and entirely devoid of joy. Ali Abdaal argues that the fastest way to instantly boost your productivity is to reintroduce the concept of play into your professional life. Narrator, the broaden and build theory. This is not just a cute philosophical idea. It is hard neuroscience. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson developed the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. Her research proves that when you experience negative emotions like fear or stress, your brain initiates a fight or flight response. Your focus narrows violently. Your creativity shuts down. You can only see the threat. But when you experience positive emotions, like the joy of play, your brain broadens its awareness. You see more possibilities. Your problem-solving skills skyrocket. You physically build new psychological resources. If you want to do better work, you must make the work feel fun. Narrator. The 3 archetypes of play. How do you make answering emails, writing a thesis, or analyzing corporate taxes fun? Abdaal suggests adopting one of 3 play archetypes. 1. The adventure mindset. Stop looking at your task as a chore and start looking at it as an exploration. If you have to write a difficult report, ask yourself, what is the most fascinating, hidden piece of data I can find to include in this? Shift your internal language from, I have to do this, to, I wonder what will happen if I try this? Curiosity is the ultimate antidote to dread. 2. The game mindset. Human beings are biologically wired to love games. Gamify your boring tasks. Set a timer for 20 minutes and race against the clock to see how many emails you can clear. Create a point system for your daily habits. Make a bet with a coworker. When you add rules, a time limit, and a scoring system, a mundane task suddenly becomes highly addictive. 3. The maker mindset. We are born creators. Even in highly analytical jobs, find the artistry in what you are doing. If you are building a financial model, do not just make it functional, make it visually beautiful. Take pride in the aesthetic structure of your spreadsheets. When you view yourself as an artist rather than a drone, the energy naturally returns. The lesson. The next time you are staring at a massive project and feeling the heavy, crushing weight of procrastination, ask yourself one simple, life-changing question. What would this look like if it were fun? Your brain will instantly generate a creative, energized solution. Chapter 2. The fuel of power, autonomy, and ownership. Play generates the initial spark of energy. But to keep the engine running, you need a fuel source that never depletes. That fuel source is power. In psychological terms, power does not mean dominating other people. It means autonomy. It is the profound internal belief that you have control over your own life, your own choices, and your own work. Narrator. The poison of extrinsic motivation. Think about a time when you were deeply engaged in a hobby you loved. You felt energized. Now imagine someone walked into the room, pointed a gun at your head, and said, "You must do this hobby for the next 5 hours, exactly the way I tell you to do it, or you are fired." Instantly, the joy evaporates. The exact same task went from being a passion to a prison. Why? Because your autonomy was stolen. When we rely on extrinsic motivation, doing things out of fear of a boss, fear of failure, or purely for a paycheck, we drain our biological energy reserves. To feel good and produce elite results, we must operate on intrinsic motivation, doing things because we genuinely want to, and because we have ownership over the process. But what if you have a demanding corporate job? You have a boss. You have deadlines. You can't just do whatever you want. How do you find autonomy in a strict environment? Abdaal teaches that autonomy is a state of mind. You must consciously reframe your psychological relationship to your obligations. You must eliminate the phrase, "I have to," from your vocabulary, and replace it with "I choose to." Amateur mindset. I have to stay late and finish this presentation because my boss is forcing me. Victim mentality. Energy drains. The empowered mindset. I choose to stay late and finish this presentation because I want to build a reputation as an elite, reliable executive, which will ultimately serve my long-term career goals. Ownership mentality. Energy spikes. The physical reality of staying late at the office is identical. But the psychological framing changes everything. When you remind your brain that you are in the driver's seat, that every action you take is a deliberate choice serving your ultimate goal, you reclaim your power. Narrator. The confidence of competence. The second pillar of power is competence. We hate doing things we are bad at. We procrastinate on tasks that make us feel stupid. To generate feel-good energy, you must adopt the student mindset. Instead of feeling threatened by a task you don't understand, view it as a deliberate training ground. If you are struggling with a complex new software at work, do not suffer in silence. Shift your goal. Your goal is no longer just finish the project. Your goal is master this software so I become the most dangerous analyst in the room. When you focus on acquiring the skill, rather than just surviving the deadline, you tap into the ultimate fuel of human nature. The thrill of getting better. Chapter 3. The synergy of people, relational energy. You have integrated play. You have reclaimed your power. But if you try to execute your massive goals entirely in isolation, you will eventually run out of steam. The final, explosive ingredient in the energize engine is people. We are biologically, evolutionarily wired to be tribal creatures. For millions of years, isolation meant death. Our nervous systems are designed to regulate, heal, and energize in the presence of other human beings. Yet, modern hustle culture glorifies the lone wolf. We lock ourselves in our rooms, put on noise-canceling headphones, and try to grind out our success entirely alone. Abdaal reveals that relational energy is one of the most potent, untapped productivity hacks on the planet. Narrator. The comrade mentality. Think about the military or elite sports teams. They endure unimaginable physical and mental suffering, but they do not quit. Why? They are not doing it for the medal. They are doing it for the person standing next to them. When you feel like quitting, your internal willpower is often too weak to keep you going. But if someone else is relying on you or working alongside you, you will instantly find a hidden reserve of energy. You can hack this biology by implementing synchronous work, often called body doubling. If you have to do 3 hours of agonizing, boring administrative work, do not do it alone in your bedroom. Go to a coffee shop with a highly driven friend. Agree to sit across from each other in silence for 2 hours and work. Even though you are not talking, The mere physical presence of another human being engaged in deep focus acts as a massive neurological anchor. You borrow their momentum. You feel a subconscious obligation not to break the spell. The friction of the work vanishes. Narrator. The helper's high. There is a strange paradox in human energy management. Logically, if you are exhausted, spending time helping someone else should make you even more exhausted. But neuroscience proves the exact opposite. It is called the helper's high. When you take 10 minutes out of your stressful day to mentor a junior employee, help a classmate, understand a complex problem, or simply offer genuine praise to a colleague, your brain releases a massive flood of oxytocin and dopamine. Helping others does not drain your battery. It plugs you into an infinite power grid. If you are feeling completely burned out, stuck, and unmotivated, the fastest way to break the cycle is not to take a nap. The fastest way to break the cycle is to go do a favor for someone else. Chapter 4. Seek clarity. If you look at your to-do list right now, I can almost guarantee it is filled with traps. The average person writes down tasks like work on thesis, fix taxes, or grow YouTube channel. You look at that list, and instantly your chest tightens. You feel a wave of resistance. You decide to go watch Netflix instead. Why did your brain reject the task? Because the human brain biologically despises uncertainty. When a task is vague, complex, or undefined, your amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, perceives it as a threat. The brain says, I have no idea what fixed taxes actually means, or how long it will take, or what step one is. This is dangerous. Let's go look at social media instead, because that is predictable and safe. To unblock yourself, you must destroy the fog. You must seek clarity. Narrator. The commander's intent. The first layer of clarity is the why. In the military, generals know that battle plans almost always fall apart the moment the first shot is fired. To ensure the troops still win the battle even in total chaos, the military uses a concept called commander's intent. Commander's intent is the single underlying purpose of the operation. If the literal plan is, take Hill 42, the commander's intent might be, prevent the enemy from firing on the valley. If taking Hill 42 becomes impossible, the troops know they can still achieve the intent by destroying the bridge instead. When you feel paralyzed by a project, ask yourself, what is my commander's intent? What is the ultimate outcome I am trying to achieve here? When you realize that your ultimate intent is simply to provide a comfortable life for my family, the agonizing frustration of a specific corporate spreadsheet suddenly loses its terrifying power. You reconnect with the deeper mission. Narrator. The next physical action. The second layer of clarity is the what. You must translate vague, terrifying goals into hyperspecific, totally unthreatening physical actions. Ali Abdaal relies heavily on the philosophy of David Allen, creator of Getting Things Done. Never write a project on your daily to-do list. Only write the next action. The next action must be a visible, physical behavior that you can complete without needing to make any further decisions. Chapter 5. Find courage. You have the energy. You have perfectly defined the next action, but you still aren't moving. If clarity doesn't unblock you, you are facing the deepest, most primal friction of all: fear. We procrastinate because we are terrified of failure, and we are terrified of judgment. If you are starting a YouTube channel, your brain tells you, what if the video is terrible? What if my coworkers find it and laugh at me? What if I ruin my reputation forever? Because the fear is painful, you avoid the pain by avoiding the task. You procrastinate. Ali Abdaal teaches that you cannot fight fear with empty hustle slogans. You cannot just yell at yourself to be brave. You must use logic to clinically dismantle the terror. The fear-setting protocol. Adapted from investor Tim Ferriss, fear-setting is a stoic exercise that forces you to take your vague, terrifying anxieties out of your head and put them onto a piece of paper, where they instantly lose their power. 1. Define the worst-case scenario. Name the nightmare. Write down exactly what you are terrified of. Be brutally specific. If I post this YouTube video, my boss might see it, think it's stupid, and I will feel embarrassed at the office on Monday. When you write it down, you realize to achieve here. When you realize that your ultimate intent is simply to provide a comfortable life for my family, the agonizing frustration of a specific corporate spreadsheet suddenly loses its terrifying power. You reconnect with the deeper mission. Narrator, the next physical action. The second layer of clarity is the what. You must translate vague, terrifying goals into hyperspecific, totally unthreatening physical actions. Ali Abdaal relies heavily on the philosophy of David Allen, creator of Getting Things Done. Never write a project on your daily to-do list. Only write the next action. The next action must be a visible, physical behavior that you can complete without needing to make any further decisions. Chapter 5. Find courage. You have the energy. You have perfectly defined the next action, but you still aren't moving. If clarity doesn't unblock you, you are facing the deepest, most primal friction of all: fear. We procrastinate because we are terrified of failure, and we are terrified of judgment. If you are starting a YouTube channel, your brain tells you, what if the video is terrible? What if my coworkers find it and laugh at me? What if I ruin my reputation forever? Because the fear is painful, you avoid the pain by avoiding the task. You procrastinate. Ali Abdaal teaches that you cannot fight fear with empty hustle slogans. You cannot just yell at yourself to be brave. You must use logic to clinically dismantle the terror. The fear-setting protocol. Adapted from investor Tim Ferriss, fear-setting is a stoic exercise that forces you to take your vague, terrifying anxieties out of your head and put them onto a piece of paper, where they instantly lose their power. 1. Define the worst-case scenario. Name the nightmare. Write down exactly what you are terrified of. Be brutally specific. If I post this YouTube video, my boss might see it, think it's stupid, and I will feel embarrassed at the office on Monday. When you write it down, you realize the nightmare is usually just a bruised ego, not actual death or bankruptcy. 2. Prevent the armor. What specific, physical steps can you take right now to reduce the likelihood of the nightmare happening? I will make sure I don't discuss my corporate job in the video, and I won't share the link on my professional LinkedIn profile yet. 3. Repair the safety net. If the absolute worst-case scenario does happen, how would you fix it? If my boss sees it and makes a joke, I will just smile, own it, and say I'm learning a new skill in video editing. If it gets too embarrassing, I can always just delete the video. Narrator, the October 10th 10 rule. To completely shatter the illusion of fear, Abdaal recommends applying the October 10th 10 rule. When you are terrified of making a mistake, sending a risky email, or launching a new project, ask yourself, will this matter in 10 minutes? Yes, I will probably feel nervous. Will this matter in 10 months? Maybe I might have learned a few lessons from it. Will this matter in 10 years? Absolutely not. No one will even remember it happened. The human brain suffers from the spotlight effect. We biologically assume that everyone in the world is watching our every move, scrutinizing our every flaw. The liberating, beautiful truth of human existence is that nobody cares about you. Everyone is entirely obsessed with their own lives, their own fears, and their own insecurities. When you realize that nobody is watching, the fear of judgment evaporates. You are free to play. You are free to fail. You are free to build. Chapter 6. Get started. The physics of momentum. Audio FX. The heavy, grinding sound of trying to push a massive boulder from a dead stop takes every ounce of muscle and it barely moves an inch. But once it shifts, it starts rolling down a hill. The sound transforms into a smooth, rushing, unstoppable force. You don't have to push anymore. Gravity and momentum are doing all the work. The fog is cleared. The fear is dismantled. There is only one step left in the unblock phase. You must physically get started. Isaac Newton's first law of motion states, an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion. This law applies perfectly to human psychology. The absolute hardest part of any task, whether it is writing a book, going to the gym, or cleaning your house, is the transition from 0 to 1. The transition from sitting on the couch to sitting at the desk. Once you are in motion, the friction disappears. momentum takes over. So, how do we hack our psychology to force that initial transition? Narrator: lowering the activation energy. In chemistry, a reaction requires a certain amount of activation energy to spark. If the energy required is too high, the reaction never happens. In productivity, if the activation energy required to start your work is too high, you will procrastinate. You must relentlessly design your environment to lower the activation energy of good habits and raise the activation energy of bad habits. If you want to play the guitar every morning, do not keep the guitar locked in a case in the back of your closet. The activation energy required to open the closet, take out the case, and tune the strings is too high. Leave the guitar sitting on a stand in the middle of your living room. The activation energy is now zero. You just pick it up. Conversely, if you want to stop scrolling on your phone when you wake up, do not keep the phone on your nightstand. Put the charger in the kitchen. If you have to physically get out of bed and walk down the hall to check Instagram, the activation energy is too high. Your brain will choose to sleep instead. Design a world where doing the right thing is the path of least resistance. The ultimate psychological hack for getting started is the 5-minute rule. When you are staring at a massive, terrifying project, your brain calculates the massive amount of effort required to finish it, and it rebels. You must lie to your brain. Make a deal with yourself. Say, I am not going to finish this report today. I am only going to work on it for exactly 5 minutes. When the 5 minutes are up, I have full permission to stop and watch television. Your brain hears this and says, okay, 5 minutes is nothing. We can survive 5 minutes. You sit down. You start the timer. You write the first sentence. What happens? Newton's first law of motion kicks in. You transition from an object at rest to an object in motion. When the 5-minute timer goes off 90% of the time, you will not stop. You have overcome the initial friction, you are already engaged in the puzzle, and the work suddenly feels easier than quitting. You tricked your brain into momentum. Chapter 7. Conserve, plugging the energy leaks. You wake up feeling energized. You have a plan. But by 2 p.m., you feel completely drained and exhausted, even though you haven't actually accomplished your main goals. Where did your energy go? Abdaal explains that most of us are completely unaware of our energy leaks. We leak our precious cognitive fuel on tiny, invisible obligations that we never actually wanted to do in the first place. To sustain your productivity over a decade, you cannot just focus on generating more energy. You must ruthlessly conserve the energy you already have. Narrator: the energy audit. To plug the holes in your bucket, you must conduct a personal energy audit. Open your calendar and look at the last 2 weeks of your life. Look at every meeting you attended, every coffee date you agreed to, and every extra project you took on at work. Ask yourself 2 brutal questions about each item. 1. Did this activity give me energy? 2. Or did this activity drain my energy? You will quickly realize that you are spending 60% of your week doing things that drain you, simply because you felt guilty, or because you wanted to please someone else. We leak energy because we are terrible at saying no. We receive an invitation to join a committee, or a request to help a colleague with a massive project, and our default biological response is to say, sure, I can do that. Abdaal borrows a legendary framework from entrepreneur Derek Sivers. If it is not a hell yeah, it is a no. When an opportunity comes across your desk, pay attention to your immediate physical reaction. If your brain doesn't instantly scream, hell yeah, that sounds amazing and I absolutely want to do it, then you must decline the offer. If your reaction is, well, I guess I should probably do it because it might look good on my resume, that is a no. That is a trap. That is a hole in your bucket. Narrator: the art of the graceful no. People are terrified of saying no because they do not want to burn bridges or seem lazy. But the master productivity expert knows that saying no to a distraction is actually saying yes to your commander's intent. To say no gracefully without causing conflict, use the bandwidth equation. When your boss or a friend asks you to take on a draining task, you reply, "Thank you so much for thinking of me for this. Unfortunately, my current bandwidth is entirely committed to finishing Project X by Friday at the highest possible standard." If I take this new task on, the quality of Project X will suffer. I have to decline for now. You did not say you were lazy. You did not complain. You simply stated a biological law of physics: your bandwidth is full. By protecting your time, you actually increase the respect others have for your focus. Chapter 8. Recharge, the science of true rest. We arrive at the most misunderstood concept in the modern working world. Hustle culture has completely destroyed our relationship with rest. When we sit down to take a break, we feel a deep, gnawing sense of guilt. We feel like we are falling behind. But Ali Abdaal points out a massive neurological truth. Rest is not the opposite of work. Rest is the prerequisite for high-quality work. In weightlifting, your muscles do not grow while you are lifting the weights. They grow while you are sleeping. In productivity, your brain does not synthesize brilliant ideas while you are staring at a spreadsheet. It synthesizes them while you are taking a shower, walking the dog, or resting. However, all rest is not created equal. We must understand the critical clinical difference between recharging and numbing. Narrator, the trap of numbing. Imagine you come home from a brutal 12-hour workday. You are completely drained. You collapse onto the couch, turn on Netflix, and scroll through Instagram on your phone for 3 hours. You think you are resting. You are not. You are numbing. Numbing is an activity that pauses your energy drain, but it does not refill the tank. Scrolling social media floods your brain with cheap dopamine and erratic stimuli. It keeps your nervous system in a state of low-level anxiety. When you finally go to sleep, your tank is still completely empty. You wake up the next morning feeling just as exhausted as the night before. This leads to a psychological phenomenon called revenge bedtime procrastination. When you feel like you had zero autonomy or joy during your workday, you refuse to go to sleep at night. You stay up late numbing yourself, trying to steal back some free time, which ultimately ruins your productivity for the next day. True rest requires intention. It requires activities that actively pour energy back into your bucket. Abdaal utilizes the CALM framework to identify activities that provide high-quality, restorative rest. To truly recharge, your downtime should ideally include one or more of these elements. C. Competence. Hobbies where you are actively building a skill just for the joy of it, without any pressure to monetize it. E.g., playing the guitar, painting, learning a language. Autonomy. Time where you are in absolute, total control of. Out of steam. The final, explosive ingredient in the energize engine is people. We are biologically, evolutionarily wired to be tribal creatures. For millions of years, isolation meant death. Our nervous systems are designed to regulate, heal, and energize in the presence of other human beings. Yet, modern hustle culture glorifies the lone wolf. We lock ourselves in our rooms, put on noise-canceling headphones, and try to grind out our success entirely alone. Ali Abdaal reveals that relational energy is one of the most potent, untapped productivity hacks on the planet. Narrator, the comrade mentality. Think about the military or elite sports teams. They endure unimaginable physical and mental suffering, but they do not quit. Why? They are not doing it for the medal. They are doing it for the person standing next to them. When you feel like quitting, your internal willpower is often too weak to keep you going. But if someone else is relying on you or working alongside you, you will instantly find a hidden reserve of energy. You can hack this biology by implementing synchronous work, often called body doubling. If you have to do 3 hours of agonizing, boring administrative work, do not do it alone in your bedroom. Go to a coffee shop with a highly driven friend. Agree to sit across from each other in silence for 2 hours and work. Even though you are not talking, the mere physical presence of another human being engaged in deep focus acts as a massive neurological anchor. You borrow their momentum. You feel a subconscious obligation not to break the spell. The friction of the work vanishes. Narrator, the helper's high. There is a strange paradox in human energy management. Logically, if you are exhausted, spending time helping someone else should make you even more exhausted. But neuroscience proves the exact opposite. It is called the helper's high. When you take 10 minutes out of your stressful day to mentor a junior employee, help a classmate. AI takes your job. What would you do instead? Write out a 5-year plan for your backup career. Maybe you become a teacher or open a bakery or become a consultant. This step destroys the fear of the unknown. Proves you have survival options. 3. Timeline 3. The unconstrained path. The wild card. Imagine that money and social judgment are completely irrelevant. You have $10 million in the bank, and nobody will laugh at you regardless of what you do. What would you do with your life for the next 5 years? Would you travel the world writing a novel? Would you build a charity? Map it out in detail. Look at Timeline 3, the unconstrained path. Most people look at their wildcard timeline and sigh, thinking, well, that's a beautiful dream, but I need to pay my mortgage, so I have to stay on Timeline 1. Abdaal says this is the ultimate tragedy of adult life. You do not have to quit your job and burn your life to the ground to achieve alignment. You simply need to make a 10% course correction. Look at the core values hidden inside your wildcard timeline. If your wildcard dream is to open a bakery in Paris, what does that actually represent? It represents a desire for creativity, a love of food, and a slower, more artistic pace of life. How can you inject 10% of that reality into your current week? Maybe you take a French baking class every Saturday morning. Maybe you host a dinner party for your friends once a month. When you inject 10% of your ultimate, authentic joy into your current life, your baseline level of happiness skyrockets. And as we learned in part 1, when you feel good, your brain expands, your energy multiplies, and your productivity in your boring day job massively increases. Alignment is not about perfection. It is about making sure that the steering wheel is pointing toward joy. Conclusion. The final harvest. You have reached the end of the methodology. Look at the psychological evolution you have undergone over these 3 masterclass sessions. You have rejected the toxic, suffocating myth of hustle culture. You no longer believe that you must sacrifice your soul to build an empire. You know the ultimate biological truth. Feeling good is not the reward for productivity. It is the fuel for productivity. You have built the engine of energy. You have embraced the adventure, game, and maker mindsets to turn tedious chores into deep, joyful play. You have reclaimed your power by shifting from I have to I choose to, and you have tapped into the infinite grid of relational energy by embracing the helper's high. You have cleared the path of all friction. You know that procrastination is cured by seeking clarity and defining the microscopic next action. You have dismantled the terror of the amygdala using fear setting, and you have hacked the laws of physics to get started using the 5-minute rule. And you have now built the fortress of sustainability. You know how to conserve your bandwidth using the hell yeah or no principle. You have abandoned the exhausting trap of numbing, choosing instead to recharge through active, high-quality calm rest. And you have aligned your entire trajectory using the Odyssey plan, ensuring that every step you take is a 10% correction toward your ultimate joy. The world will constantly tell you to work harder. The world will tell you to grind, to suffer, and to sacrifice your happiness for a future that is not guaranteed. Ali Abdaal has handed you the ultimate, devastating, beautiful truth. The journey is the destination. If you are suffering through every single day of your life in the hopes that you will be happy in 10 years, you are playing a slow-slosing game. But if you can find a way to make the work feel light, to find curiosity in the spreadsheets, and to find connection in the chaos, you become unstoppable. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment.